Hi and welcome to this video. So in this video we're going to look to build on the skills, movements and exercises that you've been developing while following the drill progressions framework. Now we're going to do this by introducing you to what's called movement flows. Now what a movement flow is simply sequencing together a series of exercises one after the other in tandem to form short workouts or circuits. Now I have taken the liberty in taking a selection of exercises from the freestyle drill progressions. I've done the same for the breaststroke, the same for the backstroke and the same for the butterfly. And I've put these exercises together into movement flows that you can follow. Now the benefits of putting these exercises into a movement flow is it's not only just going to develop mobility and strength, which are two key components that need to be continually worked on. But while performing a movement flow, there's also a greater demand on the trunk or the core, which as it gets stronger will help with aquatic posture and which feeds into all the strokes. But there's also a greater demand on your heart rate and your respiratory rate as well, so you'll find that they will increase. This will in turn develop or work towards developing your aerobic capacity. Now when you perform a movement flow, it's not just a case of moving from one stretch or pose into the next without any thought. When you perform a movement flow, you need to move with deliberate intent. So you should be moving slowly and with control and demonstrating strength from one position to the next. And when you see the demonstrations within this video, you'll see that. Now one thing I need you thinking about as well is as you're moving into the positions, I want you thinking about as gently as possible placing your hands and feet down on the ground. Again, that's going to be a way of demonstrating or expressing strength and control through the movement. Now this is not an instructional video for how to perform all the exercises. If you need any instruction with the individual exercises, you'll be able to find these, and I'll encourage you to look back through the drill progressions where you'll be able to find all the exercises that will be covered during these movement flows. However, with that said, there are a number of transition movements. So movements that will help you to get from one position or stretch into another position. Now these transition movements are key in forming the movement flow. Just like within each position, I'm asking you to demonstrate control and strength. As you transition from one pose to the next, you have to do it in exactly the same way. So there are a few key positions that we'll come across during these videos. One will be what's called the spinal roll, and that is a standing position that will take you from standing to either just being bent forward or hinged over, or it will take you all the way down to the ground into a kneeling position. There will also be another key position which will take you from being on all fours and will transition you through into a low lunge position, which will be a starting point to bring you back upright. An example of that would be going from a downward dog and moving through into a low lunge, a lizard pose or a Spider-Man position. Now, the skill of performing these transition movements is in the small details. And as an example, when performing the spinal roll, you'll notice in the video, if you look carefully, you'll see me performing the spinal roll by, first of all, initiating the movement by tucking the chin into my chest. And what the intention is during the spinal roll is to uncurl the spine, one vertebrae at a time, moving all the way down. You can almost visualize this as imagine it's like a zip, and I'm undoing the zip, and each catch which is undoing, that is my vertebrae undoing as I'm curling down. Now the importance behind performing the transition movements like this will help at improving not only your aquatic posture within your strokes, but will be key in helping to improve your movement during your underwater phases. So for example, when you're doing your underwater kick and you need to articulate or you need to move your spine in almost like a fish-like fashion, well, in order for you to be able to move or articulate your spine in that way, it requires you to have a lot of thought and control about not just moving large portions of the spine, but it's about thinking about being able to articulate the smaller parts. So you'll notice while I demonstrate the transition movements that I'm always trying to curve my spine, or I'm trying to articulate my spine through the movement. Now it's those small details that I'd like you to pay attention to. Now for the movement flow that you're going to follow in this video, there are just some considerations or some guidelines that I'd like to put in place before you follow the flow. Now I've got a selection of exercises at the varying levels from level 1 through to level 12 within the drill progressions. If I'm demonstrating a movement which is at level 12 and you're not yet comfortably completing that movement, then you can find a regression for that movement within the levels. So for example, if I'm demonstrating a revolved downward dog, which is a downward dog with a twist, and which is quite an advanced movement and it's in level 12 and a couple of the strokes, if I'm demonstrating that movement and you're not able to complete it, then follow one of the lower progressions. So that would be, as an example, just a simple downward dog or a downward dog with knees bent, and that would take you all the way down to maybe 2s and level 3s. So that's your first consideration. The second consideration is, within the flows, you'll see me performing press-ups as part of the transition movements. Now, if you can't perform a perfect press-up, then what I'd like you doing for the flows is, when I'm performing a press-up from the floor, I'd like you to perform a kneeling press-up. And if you're unable to perform a kneeling press-up, I simply just want you to press your hips back towards your heels, and then you're going to take your hips up into the downward dog position, or whatever the position is that I sequence the press up with. Now the key thing, or the reason why I'm asking you to do that, guys, is I don't want to see anyone snaking from the floor with their arching their lower back. And I also don't want to see anyone bringing their elbows out to the sides. Keep those elbows nice and tight. Just a few other little considerations for you as well. Now within this video, you can either follow the demonstration or you can follow the video to the T, so the duration of which I'm holding the poses. If, however, you feel you can extend the duration of which you're holding the poses and you want to take make the session a little bit longer, that is perfectly fine. If, however, you feel it's a little bit too challenging and you'd like to hold the poses for a little bit less time, that is also fine. What I don't want you doing is overreaching or pushing yourself beyond your limits within these sessions. You have plenty of time of which to develop the strength and the mobility required to perform these movements. You'll also notice that during the movement flow that I'm demonstrating, I don't actually take any rest. Now that doesn't mean to say that you have to do the same thing. If you want to move through the movement flow just as I do without any rest, that's perfectly fine. If you want to rest every 30 seconds, that is also fine. I want you to make sure that you are working within your limits. Okay guys, so that's enough from me. I want you to get into the movement flow now and enjoy it.